They brought out the second bottle of wine before I realized the waiter thought I was the hired help. He nodded at me. You know that nod you give someone who's working a wedding but isn't part of it, and whispered, "Guests are asking about the cake. Just a heads up." I smiled, said nothing. My wife, sitting 3 feet from me in a $1,000 navy gown, didn't say anything either. She didn't even look at him. She just kept laughing at Randall's joke. Randall, the father of the groom. The man who would, in less than an hour, call me a lucky mistake of genetics in front of 120 people in a string quartet. At that moment, I should have stood up. I should have said something, anything. But instead, I poured myself a glass of that wine I apparently didn't deserve and waited for someone to ask me to move out of the shot. They never did. You see, this wasn't even my wedding. It was my sister's, and I raised her like my own daughter. She was 9 when she came into my life full-time. I was 20, and broke, and tired, and angry at everyone. But I took her in and kept her in, through 3 evictions, a broken jaw, and a winter without heat. And now here we were, at a table I didn't get to choose, in a room I couldn't afford to be in, surrounded by people who looked at me like I was just another vendor. Even my wife. Especially my wife. You know what the funny part is? She liked that the waiter thought I was staff. She smiled to herself. That little smirk she does when she's pretending she doesn't find something hilarious. Later, she told me I was being sensitive. But when I found out what she did after the bouquet toss, what she said about me behind the curtain where the DJ was packing up, I realized that sensitivity wasn't my problem. She was. And she had been for a long, long time. I wasn't going to say anything. I really wasn't. I told myself I was overthinking it, like always. That maybe the waiter thing was a simple mistake, and maybe Tessa, my wife, didn't hear him. Maybe I'm the problem. That's what I do, by the way. I assume it's me. That I misunderstood, misheard, misjudged. But later that night, after the candles burned low and most of the guests had migrated to the garden patio for cigars and gossip, I found out something I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd stepped out for some air, wandered around the back of the event space. Behind the main reception hall there was a curtain, half-tied, leading to a makeshift storage area where they'd stuffed the unused decor and the DJ's backup speakers. I wasn't trying to spy. I was just standing there, hand in my pocket, picking at the label of a beer I hadn't even taken a sip from, and then I heard her. Tessa, my wife. She was laughing. You know when someone's laugh isn't joyful, but sharp? Like it's aimed at something? I froze. Not out of fear. More like instinct. Like my body knew something was about to change and didn't want to step into it too soon. She was talking to 2 women, Lane's cousin and someone I didn't recognize. Drunk voices. Loose filters. And then one of them said, "So wait. How do you know Curtis again?" Tessa snorted. That sound. Not a laugh, a dismissal. And said, "Oh, him? He's just my ride." My ride. Like I was the guy who dropped her off. The 2 girls giggled. One of them asked if we were fighting or something. And Tessa said, "No, I just didn't want to come alone. He gets like this. All emotional about his sister. Talks like he raised her on a mountaintop with wolves or something." I felt my stomach twist, like someone wrung it out with both hands. She went on. "Honestly, I think he likes feeling like the martyr. You know? Like he gets off on being the poor sad brother who gave up his life. It's exhausting." I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stood there behind that curtain, staring at a broken chair and a pile of flower petals on the floor, while my wife reduced my entire life to a performance. You know what's funny? I was never ashamed of how I raised Nora. Never once. But in that moment, I felt humiliated. Like all those years, all those missed parties, the sleepless nights, the sick days I burned so I wouldn't miss her school plays, were just invisible. To my own wife. She didn't see a man who protected a child when no one else would. She saw a narrative. A sob story. And I realized she never respected me. She loved the idea of me. The convenience. The simplicity. The fact that I never questioned when she made decisions for both of us. That I always agreed. That I needed her, or at least acted like I did. I left before I could hear more. I walked through the gravel path, back toward the venue. The music was still playing. Can't help falling in love, I think. One of those slow, timeless wedding songs that sounds sweet even when your heart is falling apart. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I didn't want to ruin Nora's night. But I knew. This marriage was something else now. Something colder. And I had no idea what I was sleeping next to anymore. What I didn't know? And what I would find out 2 days later was that Tessa's contempt wasn't new. It had been growing for months, maybe even years. And she hadn't just been talking about me behind curtains. She'd been sending things to someone else. The morning after the wedding, I made breakfast. I don't know why. Habit, I guess. I'm that kind of idiot. The one who makes French toast for the woman who embarrassed him in front of strangers the night before. She walked into the kitchen still smelling like fancy lotion and rosewater perfume, hair pulled up in that lazy twist she knew I liked. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, like she hadn't told a pair of bored women that I was just her ride. She said, "That was a beautiful wedding," and poured herself coffee without looking at me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the plate of eggs onto the floor and ask her what the hell was wrong with her. But I didn't. I smiled like I always do. Said, "Yeah, it really was, like a good, well-trained husband." I watched her scroll through her phone while sipping from the mug I gave her for our 3rd anniversary. The one that said, "You, me, and quiet mornings." What a joke. Later that afternoon, she left to help Lane's mother with post-wedding cleanup. I stayed home. I told her I was tired. That part wasn't a lie. I was exhausted, but not physically. Emotionally, I felt like I had walked barefoot through broken glass and didn't even realize it until I looked down and saw the blood. I cleaned the kitchen slowly, rinsing every dish one by one like I was performing a ritual. Somewhere between drying the frying pan and wiping down the counter, I noticed her laptop sitting open on the side table. That wasn't unusual. She was careless with her stuff, trusted me fully, or maybe just didn't think I was smart enough to ever care. I didn't go through her messages at first. I just glanced. But something caught my eye. Her Gmail tab had a draft open, like it had been accidentally left unsent. The subject line was blank. The body wasn't. And the name at the top, the one the email was addressed to, wasn't mine. It was C. Just that. One letter. No last name. No address auto-filled. Just C. And the message read, "He still doesn't suspect anything. I'm keeping it calm for now. Don't worry. After the holidays, we can talk about next steps. I just need a little more time." I stood there, blinking, trying to convince myself it was about someone else. Maybe a friend? A joke? A therapy note? But my stomach, that sick, spiraling pit I hadn't been able to shake since the wedding, told me the truth. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a misunderstanding. My wife was planning something. Something that involved me not knowing. Something that required time. Something that needed to wait until after the holidays. I didn't move. I didn't take a screenshot. I didn't even scroll to see if there were other drafts. I just sat on the couch with my palms pressed against my knees, feeling the room tilt ever so slightly. It was like being seasick in your own house. I kept hearing her voice in my head. He gets off on being the sad brother, and I started to realize just how far this ran. The way she'd been distant the past 6 months. The locked phone screen at night. The new passwords on all our streaming accounts. The sudden interest in Pilates classes she never actually attended. I thought I was just being paranoid. But now I knew I wasn't paranoid enough. When she got back that evening, I was still sitting in the same place. She asked me why I hadn't showered or changed. I said I had a headache. She told me to go lie down and started scrolling on her phone again, right in front of me, just like nothing was wrong. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She was good at this. This wasn't her first lie. This wasn't a nervous woman fumbling through guilt. This was someone who had rehearsed this version of herself, the calm, unbothered, innocent wife, so thoroughly that she could perform it on instinct. But if she was playing a role, I could too. So I started smiling again, pretending, watching, because if Tessa was planning her next steps with someone named C, I was going to be 2 steps ahead of her when the time came. What I didn't know, not yet, was who C was. And when I finally found out, it didn't make me angry. It made me afraid. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling fan until it started to look like it was spinning backward. Tessa slept beside me like nothing was wrong. She even reached over at one point and rested her hand on my chest. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just let her touch me like I was a piece of furniture she forgot to dust. The next morning, I waited until she left for work before I opened her laptop again. This time, I took screenshots. Every draft. Every outbox message. She must have deleted most of it. Maybe she was careful. Maybe she cleared her trash often. But one sent message had slipped through. It was short, sent at 3:17 a.m. about 2 weeks ago. The message said, "Next Friday. You pick the hotel this time." but no more downtown. And it was sent to a burner Gmail, a weird combo of letters and numbers with a proton mail address in the body. Whoever C was, they weren't stupid, but they were sloppy, because Tessa had also left her iPad in the bathroom drawer. And guess what was synced? Her Google Maps history. It only took 2 minutes to see the pattern. Every other Friday. Same general location. A hotel off exit 42, 30 minutes out of town, just far enough to not be seen by anyone we knew. I clicked it open. Willow Pines Motor Lodge. Classy. I wasn't angry. Not the way you'd expect. Not red-faced, screaming, throwing things angry. I felt cold. Like everything inside me was being vacuumed out. I made coffee like I always did. Sat at the table. Watched the neighbor's dog crap on my lawn. And then I made a plan. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not without knowing who he was. Because the only way this ended clean was if I had proof. Not just of the affair, but of everything else she was hiding. The money. The meetings. The next steps. So I waited. And on Friday, I followed her. She told me she had a team lunch. Said she might be late. I nodded, smiled, told her to have fun. Then I waited 5 minutes, grabbed my keys, and followed from 2 cars behind. No music, no air conditioning, just the sound of tires and breath. My hands were sweating so much I had to wipe the steering wheel twice. She took the route I expected. Exit 42, then a right, then a left, then that tiny little driveway I had never noticed before. Willow Pines. The kind of place where the front desk probably charged hourly, but still made you feel like you were asking too much. She parked. I didn't pull into the lot. I parked behind the diner across the street and waited. 13 minutes later, a silver Lexus pulled in. I couldn't see his face at first. Just a tall guy in a coat, walking like he owned the place. He didn't even check in. Just walked straight to room 6. The same room Tessa had walked into. I waited. 30 minutes. Then 45. Then I snapped. I don't remember walking across the street. I don't remember knocking on the door. I remember the sound of my knuckles on the wood. Too soft the first time, louder the second. And I remember the door opening. And then I remember his face. Because I knew him. I knew who C was. It was Randall, Lane's father. The same man who humiliated me at the wedding. The same man who called me a charity case in a suit. The man who gave my sister away at the altar with a smug smile and a $12,000 watch. He looked surprised. Not scared. Not ashamed. Just irritated. Like I was an interruption. Like I was room service with bad timing. Then he smiled. He had the nerve to smile. He said, "Curtis. Brother. Didn't expect to see you here." Brother. I almost threw up. Tessa was behind him, in a robe. Her face drained of color. I could see her mouth open, but I didn't hear what she said. All I saw was Randall, 60-something, sleazy, rich Randall, standing in a motel doorway like a king in a castle, with my wife in my robe behind him. I didn't punch him. I didn't scream. I turned around and walked back to my truck. Because in that moment, something broke in me in a way that didn't want revenge, it wanted silence. Not to punish. To bury. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was insult. This was erasure. They didn't just cheat. They mocked me. They turned my sister's wedding, the one day I thought meant something, into the starting point of a private joke between 2 people who saw me as less than real. But they made one mistake. They underestimated the quiet man. I didn't speak a word to her that night. Not when she came home. Not when she asked what I wanted for dinner. Not even when she climbed into bed with a towel still wrapped around her damp hair and whispered, "Rough day?" I just nodded, smiled faintly, and told her I was tired. I've never lied so easily in my life. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I wasn't tired. I was calculating. They assumed I'd spiral. That I'd yell, break things, maybe cry in the driveway like some drunk ex-husband in a country song. But I didn't give them that. I gave them silence. Because silence makes people nervous. It makes them start to wonder what you know, what you're planning. It creates space. And in that space, I got to work. First, I called my friend Malcolm. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but he owed me a favor. The kind of favor that comes with no questions. Malcolm used to do tech security for a private firm before he started freelancing. The man can get into anything with a signal and a half-decent password. I gave him both. He didn't ask why. Just said, "You want inboxes or accounts?" I told him both. Gmail, phone backups, anything she had on the cloud. I also asked him something else, something I never thought I'd ask anyone. Can you find deleted photos that never got backed up? Malcolm paused, then said, not easily. But yes. While he got to work, I played my part. The sad husband. Distracted. Withdrawn. I let Tessa believe her performance was working. She'd started acting more affectionate. Little touches, cooking my favorite meals, even suggesting we take a weekend trip soon. It was almost laughable. Like a magician trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat after the audience had already seen her hide it in her sleeve. She didn't know I'd been tracking her texts. Didn't know I saw the message she sent Randall 2 nights after their motel meeting. He's so quiet it's starting to freak me out. Think he suspects something? Randall's reply. Even if he does, he won't do anything. That's not who he is. That was the moment I knew what needed to happen. I needed to become someone else. So I did something that would have seemed unthinkable even a month ago. I went to Lane, my sister's husband. We'd never been close. Not for lack of trying. Just one of those relationships where you shake hands at holidays, and that's the extent of it. But I knew something he didn't. I knew that his father, Randall, was sleeping with my wife. It took everything in me not to come out and say it the moment he opened the door. But I didn't go there for a confession. I went there for one thing, access. Lane's a numbers guy. IT management. Works from home half the week. I told him, vaguely, that I was worried Tessa might be involved in something financial. Fraud, maybe. A second phone. I spun a story just convincing enough to plant a seed without exposing the truth. He looked skeptical, but he listened. I asked him if there was any way he could get a hold of phone records from his dad's company line. Just to rule it out, I said. I'd never ask if it weren't important. He said he'd see what he could do. 2 days later, he sent me a spreadsheet. Call logs. Timestamps. 24 calls from Randall's work phone to a number I didn't recognize, between midnight and 2 a.m., over the course of the last 3 months. I checked that number against Tessa's contact list. It was saved under Ashley. Of course, she didn't even try to hide it well. Just one of her old friends' names from college. A name I'd seen pop up before, one I never thought to question. And just like that, I had enough. But I didn't stop there. Because if they wanted to bury me in silence, I was going to bury them in evidence. I started documenting everything. I opened a private drive folder, created backups, printed logs. I recorded a voice memo of Tessa's fake phone call to Ashley one night, all while Randall was texting her from the very same burner account I had screenshots of. It was sloppier than I expected, almost insulting how easily I was able to stitch their little web together. But there was one last thread. Something didn't add up. It wasn't just about the cheating. That part was clear. It was the money. The $6,000 missing from our shared savings account. The new credit card opened under my name. The quiet little loan she took out last month that I never signed for. I thought it was just infidelity. I was wrong. It was something else entirely. The thing about betrayal is that once you accept it's real, every detail you ignored before starts screaming at you. I couldn't stop replaying conversations, rereading text threads, analyzing glances, silences, timing. I wasn't looking for more proof of the affair. I had that. What I needed now was an answer to the question that had been clawing at the inside of my skull for days. Why was there money missing? Why would Tessa risk opening a credit card in my name? Why a loan she never told me about? Affairs are usually about ego or escape. This was something else. This had structure. I called Malcolm again. I asked him to dig into any financial records linked to Tessa's social security number. He didn't even hesitate. Said it might take a few days. In the meantime, I played the part like I always had. I smiled when she asked if I wanted to go see her sister's new baby next weekend. I kissed her goodnight. I let her think I was still grieving. She called me babe again. Even rubbed my back one morning while I was staring blankly at my eggs. You've been so stressed lately, she said. I just want you to be okay. The words dripped like syrup. Too smooth. Too slow. Like a predator trying not to spook prey it already caught. 3 days later, Malcolm sent me a file. It was a PDF, 6 pages long. Loan accounts, payment activity, flagged IPs. But what stood out most wasn't the debt. It was the recipient account linked to the loan Tessa had taken. It was a shell business, one I'd never heard of. The name was Westbrook Consultancy. Fake, sterile, forgettable. But it was registered under a real address. A commercial box rental in a shared office space downtown. I looked it up. Tenants included a realty office, a massage therapist, and a communications consultant named R. C. Blackwood. R. C. Randall Charles Blackwood. I sat there, heart pounding, as pieces started sliding into place. Randall wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using her to funnel money through fake loans and ghost businesses. But why? For what? And then it hit me. It wasn't about stealing from me. It was about setting me up. A loan under my name. A shared savings account they could show I had access to. Tessa was painting a picture, one where I looked like a man hiding debt. A man who was spiraling, unstable, irresponsible, maybe even dangerous. All it would take was one false claim from her, one concerned phone call, and I'd be buried under allegations I wouldn't even understand until it was too late. They weren't just cheating. They were building an exit strategy, one that ended with me out of the house, out of the picture, maybe out of my job, or worse, behind bars for fraud I never even saw coming. It was brilliant in a sick way. I'd spent years thinking I was the protector, the provider, the quiet hero of my own little domestic story. And all the while, they were rewriting the ending behind my back. I wanted to confront her. God, I wanted to. I wanted to drag her into the living room, throw the folder on the table, and ask her if Randall helped her practice her tears in the mirror too. But I didn't. Because screaming at a liar never gets you truth. It gets you confusion, deflection, chaos, which is exactly what they'd want. No, if they were planning a performance, I was going to let them. Let them build their little trap. Let them rehearse their lines. Let them make one final mistake. Because I had already started documenting everything. Not just what they did, but what I didn't. The untouched accounts. The records I backed up before they tried to wipe them. The footage I was now gathering from the nanny cam I hid in our home office. She thought I was broken, that I was paralyzed by pain. But I wasn't frozen. I was waiting. And when I finally pulled the last thread, their whole story was going to collapse. In court, in public, on record. Because the only thing worse than betrayal is being stupid enough to think you won't be held accountable for it. The day I decided to let her destroy herself started like any other. Cold coffee, a kiss on the cheek, a soft love you from a mouth that probably still tasted like Randall. I'd learned not to flinch anymore. You have to train yourself for that, not to react. To become insulation. Emotions are what they feed off. Guilt, confusion, panic. But if you give them nothing, they start looking for a fire that isn't there, and in the scramble to light one, they drop the match. So I gave her matches. It started with a text. A simple, "Hey, thinking of refinancing the car loan. Can you send me the paperwork you filed last month?" I knew she hadn't filed anything. I knew the loan didn't even exist. But I wanted to see what she'd say. She texted back 15 minutes later. "Oh yeah, I'll send it later today. At work now." That was line number 1. I didn't respond. Later that night, she came home with takeout. Thai. She hates Thai. I love it. She was trying to reset things again. I asked her casually if she'd gotten around to the refinancing stuff. She blinked, just a little too long, and said, "Oh, not yet. I'll do it tomorrow." I had a migraine. Lie number 2. That little pause told me everything. She was stalling, running through mental files, trying to remember what she had and hadn't said. The web was starting to sag under the weight of her own fabrication. So I gave her more rope. I told her I'd made a financial mistake. Said I accidentally authorized a transfer to the wrong account. That it might have triggered a bank review. I watched her eyes. The way they flicked up from her phone for just a second too long. The way she said, "I'm sure it'll be fine." A little too fast. Tension. Not panic. Just the crackle before the fire. That night, I checked the nanny cam footage. I had placed it on the top shelf of the office, hidden inside a hollowed-out dictionary. One of those gag gifts my sister gave me in college. Now it was surveillance. And it paid off. While I was in the shower, Tessa went into the office. Not for long. 5, maybe 6 minutes. But she sat at my computer, opened 2 tabs. One was our bank account. The other was an incognito window. She typed something. I couldn't see what. The camera didn't catch the screen. But her body language gave it away. Shoulders hunched, breathing through her nose, typing like she was racing against something. She took a photo of something on screen, then deleted the tab and wiped her prints from the mouse with the sleeve of her hoodie. That was the part that chilled me. The wipe. That meant she wasn't panicking. She was used to this. Like she'd done it before. I recorded the footage. Date-stamped it. Uploaded it to the secure drive I'd created under a name she wouldn't ever think to search. The title of a book she said she hated so much she couldn't finish the first chapter. Perfect. By the end of the week, I had 6 more files. Screen recordings. Bank statements. GPS logs. All legal. All quietly documented. I'd even pulled Randall's fake business through a search on the Secretary of State website. Westbrook Consultancy didn't just exist, it had a tax ID, which meant someone was filing something under that name. I submitted a tip through the IRS whistleblower portal. Anonymous. Factual. Unemotional. Then came the real trap. I sent her flowers. I know. It sounds insane, but it was the last thing she'd expect. A card that read, "Thank you for standing by me through all the stress. I love you." The next day, she booked a salon appointment, got her nails done, posted a story with the caption, "Feeling lucky." That night, she initiated. We hadn't touched in weeks, maybe months, but she kissed me like she was proud of herself, like she'd won. She didn't know I already had the emails, the phone logs, the fabricated paperwork. She didn't know I'd recorded her crying on the phone to Randall, saying, "I just need him to sign off on the refinance, and we're in the clear." She didn't know the police were already reviewing documentation of the financial discrepancies tied to her name and Randall's. She didn't know that I was already in touch with a lawyer, not just for divorce, but for fraud protection, asset isolation, and a preemptive restraining order if things went the way I feared they might. Because by now, I wasn't just watching a liar. I was watching a criminal. And she was about to walk into a courtroom thinking she was the victim. The morning everything unraveled, she was in the kitchen making coffee. Same as always. She even hummed to herself, like a woman in a toothpaste commercial. Like someone who hadn't built a demolition charge beneath her own life with wires made of lies. The smell of French roast filled the kitchen while she stood there in my hoodie, barefoot, scrolling through her phone. She didn't see the envelope in my hand. Not yet. I placed it on the table. She glanced at it, then looked at me. "What's this?" "A letter," I said. She smiled. "You're writing me letters now?" "No," I said. "That's from my attorney." There it was, the moment. The blink, the pause, the calculation. Her entire performance dropped like a curtain that had been hanging by a single nail. She didn't even reach for it. "I don't understand," she started. But I was already walking past her, toward the door. Calm. Slow. Every step lighter than the last. She didn't follow me. She just stood there, holding her mug like a shield, like it might somehow keep the truth from hitting her all at once. She would learn soon enough what was inside. A formal divorce filing. A request for separation of assets, supported by documentation of fraudulent activity tied to her name. Copies of the whistleblower complaint. A cease and desist. My lawyer didn't play games. And neither did the law when it saw proof like that. And Randall? Let's just say Westbrook Consultancy doesn't exist anymore. His company released a vague press statement about an internal investigation and administrative leave pending financial audit. The whispers inside his circle are louder than facts ever needed to be. Men like Randall don't fear jail, they fear disgrace. And I made sure he got both. But none of that was the best part. The best part came 3 weeks later, when I helped my sister and Lane move into their new place. Bigger kitchen. A real backyard for the dog. While we were unloading boxes, Nora handed me a manila folder. No words, just a look. Inside was a letter. Not legal, not official, just handwritten. From her. She said she always knew something was wrong with Tessa. That she felt guilty for not saying anything. That the speech I gave at her wedding, the one that Randall tried to bury with his smug little toast, meant everything to her. She said, "You didn't just raise me. You showed me how not to become like the people who tried to break us." I cried in my truck for 20 minutes after reading that. Ugly, snotty crying. The kind that leaves you breathless, not because you're in pain, but because something that's been locked up for too long finally gets to come out. And the truth is, I didn't walk away from my marriage with a win. There was no glorious courtroom reveal. No audience applauding me for being clever. I lost time. I lost trust. I lost years I'll never get back. But I also walked away free. Free from the slow, daily erosion of self-worth. Free from loving someone who thought I was a tool to be used, not a person to be cherished. Free from lying to myself to protect someone who wouldn't have flinched if I disappeared. I got my name back. My credit. My sanity. I got quiet mornings again, but this time, truly quiet. No secrets behind bathroom doors. No silences that had teeth in them. And I'm starting over. Not perfectly, but honestly. So if you're reading this, and you're where I was, confused, small, afraid you're overreacting, let me say this. You're not crazy for trusting someone. But you will be, If you keep trusting someone who's already proven they don't deserve it, let them lie, let them scheme, and then let them face the one thing they never expected. A version of you that's finally done shrinking. Because sometimes walking away with nothing is just clearing space for everything that actually matters.